Imagine an empire so powerful that Rome, the greatest military force the ancient world had ever seen, couldn't defeat it. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. An empire that made Roman emperors beg for peace, that forced Rome to pay tribute, that stood tall for over 1,000 years while other kingdoms crumbled around it. This is not a story about Europe. This is not a story about Asia. This is Africa. And this is the story of the Kingdom of Kush. To understand how Kush defeated Rome, we first need to understand the world in which they lived. It is 300 BC. The Nile River stretches like a golden ribbon across the northeastern corner of Africa. To the north sits Egypt, ancient, powerful, legendary. But further south, past the cataracts of the Nile, past the scorching desert winds and the golden savanna, lies a kingdom that history forgot. Kush, also known as Nubia. Its capital city, Meroe, sits in what is today modern Sudan. A city of pyramids. Yes, pyramids, that predate many of Egypt's most famous structures. A city of iron smelters, gold mines, and merchants whose wealth flowed across 3 continents. The Kushites were not a primitive people. They were engineers, warriors, traders, artists, and above all, they were survivors. For centuries they had watched empires rise and fall around them. The Assyrians came, the Persians came, the Greeks came under Alexander the Great, and now the Romans were coming. But Kush had a secret weapon that none of these empires expected. A woman. Her name was Amanirenas, and she was a Kandake, a title given to the warrior queens of Kush, a title so feared that when Roman historians wrote about her, they called her a one-eyed warrior queen who rode into battle herself. Let that sink in. While Rome was ruled by emperors surrounded by armies of guards, Kush was led by a one-eyed queen who personally commanded her troops on the battlefield. It is 24 BC. Rome is at the height of its power. Emperor Augustus Caesar has just conquered Egypt, and he wants more. His armies march south toward Kush, hungry for gold, hungry for slaves, hungry for land. The Roman general Gaius Petronius leads a force of tens of thousands of soldiers, the most disciplined, most feared fighting force on earth, into Kushite territory. They are expecting easy victory. They are expecting frightened people who will surrender at the sight of Roman eagles. What they find instead is Amanirenas. She meets them not with white flags, but with arrows, thousands of arrows raining from the sky. Kushite warriors, trained from childhood in the art of war, surge forward with a ferocity that stuns the Romans. The first battle ends with Rome retreating, but Amanirenas is not finished. She marches her army north, deep into Roman-controlled Egypt, and attacks 3 Roman cities. She captures thousands of Roman soldiers. She tears down statues of Emperor Augustus and buries his head beneath the steps of her victory temple, so that forever her people would walk over the face of Rome. Augustus Caesar is furious. A queen from Africa has humiliated the most powerful empire on earth. He sends Petronius back with an even larger army. This time, Rome is not playing games. The Romans push deep into Kushite territory. They burn villages. They destroy the city of Napata, the ancient religious capital of Kush. They capture thousands of Kushites and sell them into slavery. It seems like Rome has won. But Amanirenas refuses to surrender. She retreats south, deeper into Kushite territory, where the Roman supply lines are stretched thin, where the desert heat punishes soldiers used to Mediterranean weather, where Kushite archers know every rock, every hill, every shadow. The Romans cannot sustain the campaign. Their soldiers are dying, not from battle, but from heat, disease, and exhaustion. And then something extraordinary happens. Augustus Caesar, the most powerful man on earth, sends ambassadors to Amanirenas, not to demand surrender, but to negotiate peace. Rome wants a deal. Think about what that means. The empire that had conquered Gaul, Spain, Greece, Egypt, and the entire Mediterranean world was sitting across a table from an African queen, asking for peace. Amanirenas agrees, but on her terms. The Treaty of Samos is signed in 21 BC. Rome agrees to withdraw from Kushite territory. Rome agrees to return captured Kushites. And most remarkably, Rome agrees to waive all taxes and tributes that Kush owed. Kush owed Rome nothing. Africa had defeated Rome. But why don't we know this story? Why did nobody teach us about Amanirenas in school? Why is the Kingdom of Kush absent from most history books? Why do we know the names of Roman emperors, but not the names of African queens who defeated them? The answer is complicated and uncomfortable. When European historians began writing the official history of the ancient world in the 18th and 19th centuries, they had an agenda. They were living in an era of colonization, an era where the idea that African people were inferior was used to justify stealing their land, their resources, and their freedom. A story about an African queen defeating Rome didn't fit that narrative, so they buried it. They wrote about Rome's victories and glossed over its defeats. They described Kush as a minor kingdom, a footnote, when in reality it was one of the longest-lasting civilizations in human history. The Kingdom of Kush survived for over 1,000 years. It outlasted the Greek Empire. It outlasted the Roman Empire. It stood until 350 AD, long after Rome had begun its own collapse. The pyramids of Meroe, over 200 of them, still stand today in Sudan, taller and more numerous than many Egyptian pyramids. Yet most people have never heard of them. Amanirenas, one of the greatest military leaders in ancient history, is known to only a handful of scholars. But not anymore. This is why Chronicles of Africa exists. Because history is not just dates and battles. History is identity. History is power. History is knowing where you come from so you understand who you are. The story of Kush, the story of Amanirenas, the story of an African kingdom that looked Rome in the eye and refused to blink. This story belongs to the world, and there are hundreds more like it. Empires you've never heard of, warriors whose names were erased, queens who commanded armies, cities that rivaled anything in Europe or Asia. We are just getting started. If this video opened your eyes, share it with someone who needs to see it. Leave a comment telling us which African empire you want us to cover next. And subscribe, because next week we go even deeper. This is Chronicles of Africa, the history they never taught you, until now.